Hey everyone, Dave here, working on my early 70s Ariens 32 Snow Thro. Bought this about a year ago, supposedly refurbished, although I think it was more of a just clean it all up and paint it, made it look real nice. I used it a couple times last year and it was okay, but I did have a problem with the drive pulley down there at the bottom. I shot a video of me replacing that pulley, this one down the bottom. So I had to replace that, put a bigger fan belt on it. I replaced the idler pulley here. So I think the drive is all sorted out. The engine, it's a 9-horse Tecumseh. And while it would run full throttle, no problems, it really wouldn't idle very good. You had to have it like quarter throttle just to keep it running. Put a rebuild kit in it, didn't do much better. And then I just went and bought a complete brand new carburetor. It was like 30 bucks, something like that. And as soon as I put that on, it starts right up, idles nice, runs good. So I'm happy with the horsepower, the engine's running good, the drive is good. Also, recently I put an impeller enhancement kit on it, which are the squeegees that you bolt right to the impeller. I shot another video of me doing that to my Craftsman blower, and it was amazing. So I did it to this one as well. This one's got 4 blades in the impeller. I put a squeegee on 2 of them, so it should stay balanced. Let's see, what else did I do? Just some regular, lubricated. I didn't know what was on the end there, if that was a bearing. It's just a bushing. I lubricated the bushings on both sides, but the one thing that I never looked at all is this gear drive in the middle. Kind of an important part. It doesn't leak any gear oil anywhere, so I think the seals are in good shape. I'm just gonna go and change the fluid in there, make sure it's good clean fluid. I've never done it before, but we'll drain it, see what it looks like. We'll put some fresh fluid in there, and hopefully I won't have to worry about that, and then this whole thing will be completely sorted out. So let's get started on changing the oil in this gear drive. Alright, so I want to put a pan down here to catch all the oil. I'm just going to put a piece of white paper in there so I can kind of get a look at the oil and see what it looks like. And then we've got to take those 2 plugs out. Alright, so this seems pretty simple. We got a fill plug and a drain plug. They're square. They're about, well, I've got a square socket. 7/16. You can use a open-end wrench, a vice grip, an adjustable wrench. Get on here. I'm going to try to break free the fill before I break the drain. Alright, let's see what comes out. Hopefully something comes out, and hopefully it's nice and clean. It would be great if it was clean, but here we go. Let's see what this looks like. Doesn't look bad. I'm not sure exactly. We'll see what the new stuff looks like. But that doesn't look bad, although it doesn't look like there's a whole lot coming out of there. Alright, so I'm going to continue to let that drain out. This is 75, 90 weight oil, and it's, chilly. It's winter time, so I'm sure it's really thick. But here's what came out of it. And I mentioned that I didn't see it leaking anywhere, but that might be because there wasn't much left in there to leak out. This is what came out. I'm going to just pour a little bit of new stuff, alright, just for a comparison. So the new stuff we're putting in there is like clear. Alright, so I let it drip out for, I don't know, about an hour or so. We don't have much in here. So I don't know if this thing is possibly leaking or not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up with oil. I'm going to take it out, I'm going to start it, I'm going to run the auger for 10 minutes or so, and then I'll check to see if there's any leaks afterwards. I assume there's a seal here, and maybe one here. I don't know if they leak or not, or if there just wasn't enough gear oil in there to begin with. And now I'm just going to add my synthetic gear oil until it starts flowing out. Alright, this stuff is pretty thick. Alright, so that thing's full. Because I could stick that way inside there, squirt it, and it automatically, immediately starts coming out. So let's try to cap it off. And I'm going to take it outside and run it with the auger going. And then I'll put a piece of cardboard down. We'll run it and we'll see if we're getting any leaks anywhere. Alright, so I took it outside. I ran it for a few minutes at varying speeds. And Houston, we have a problem. It appears to be, we have a leaky seal right here on this side. Alright, so I have to disassemble this auger and gear case. And I'm going to start by separating the two with that bolt there and that bolt there, and then we'll separate the tractor part from the bucket part. Okay, next thing we're going to remove these two bolts on each side, and then this one on this side, and these two should separate. Okay, so I've separated the two parts, the tractor from the bucket. I've got the bucket up on a table that I can work on. I need to get this auger and the axles out of the bucket so that I can work on the gearbox. And I think this auger will come out if I remove that big bolt in the middle, which I believe screws into the axle of the auger. The three nuts on each end, and then this end cap will come out. And if I do that, then I will be removing this assembly here, which is the cap. And the axle, I think, is short enough where it will then just be able to pull out of the bucket. So both sides, big nut, big bolt, three nuts, the cap, and then that axle will be free to pull out of the bucket with the auger on it. And I think on this end, the drive or driven axle will just, we'll see. I think it will just pull out. I think it just goes through a bearing on this end. So let's try that and see what happens. Washer. Well, the guy I bought it from did a good job painting everything. Okay, and that comes out. Okay, let's see if this thing will now separate, if this drive axle just goes through on a splined crawler without... And it appears to be the case, so this is coming out. Alright, let me get this bucket now on the ground out of my way because I don't need it anymore. Okay, here we are. Good. Alright, let me clean everything up and we'll take a close look at this. Okay, now I want to get the augers off of the shaft. So looks like I got to remove the shear pin. Got a shear pin on both sides, and that goes through this outer collar of the auger and through the shaft. So I can't get this auger off until I get that shear pin out of the way. And then it looks like there's a pin that goes through this shaft here, keeping the auger from sliding just off of the shaft. So pull that pin out, and the shear pin's there, shear pin there, and then another pin. Here's a good look at it. Just punch that pin right out of the shaft, and then this augers should both slide off each side. And now I'm just going to have the gear case with the shafts coming out, and then maybe we can get to our seal, which is the problem. So this is good, we're getting there. Alright, let's clean this up so we get a good look at what we've got to work with here. Okay, this side of the pin here is all distorted, so I'm going to punch it out this way. I got a good round pin here. This pin is flattened off and distorted, so I can't go this way. I'll try to punch it out that way, being very careful not to pancake this end so it won't come out either. Alright, let's see. Just going to go gentle here. Oh, this is good. This is moving on. Alright guys, I apologize. I had some kind of an issue with the camera, film, card, whatever. I lost a bunch of videos on the disassembly of this thing. So we'll just have to pick it up here on the reassembly of everything and replacement of the seals, which is why I'm doing this whole little project. But as you see it go together, you'll understand how it comes apart, and it's very simple how it comes apart, but that's not to say easy. The issue that I had taking it apart is the right side auger slid right off the shaft, and then you slide the left side auger off the shaft, except that this left side auger was missing a grease fitting. I mean, this thing's 50 years old. I've had it for about a year, so I don't know how long that grease fitting was missing. Instead of a fitting, there was just a hole there. Water's getting in there, moisture, corrosion, whatever. The thing would not come off. I had to torch that center tube till it was glowing red hot, and it still wouldn't come out. I then had to cut a relief slice in it, then heat it up with the idea that it would expand even more. And I still had to pound the living daylights out of this shaft to get it out of this auger. And when I finally did, then I just welded up that slice. So I mean, there was a couple of good videos in there. You might have been entertained, but that one little part of sliding the auger off the shaft and the right side came off, no problems whatsoever. Had both grease fittings on it, slid right off. Getting this other auger off took me probably 3 hours. This thing's, you can't just go down to the store and get an auger and a shaft for 70 whatever Snow Thro. So I had to get it off at some point. The good news is that this thing is so darn heavy duty. I mean, look at the thickness in that tube. These augers are so damn strong. You are never ever going to bend one of these augers on a chunk of ice. Ever. I don't care. So they're so heavy duty, they're going to last forever. There's no reason why this whole assembly won't last another 50 years, but you got to do some maintenance to it, because if you leave it, I mean, the shear pin was doing nothing to protect this thing. Could have taken that shear pin out and this thing would have worked fine, and if you hit a chunk of ice, you're going to damage the next weakest link, which would probably be that worm gear or the ring gear. But now I've got, this auger is going to spin freely on that shaft prior to putting in the shear pin. So I'll be safe. If you do hit a chunk of ice and it breaks a shear pin, you just slide another shear pin out of there, remove the ice, slap a shear pin in there, and you're going. The way this thing was, if I ever hit something, the Sunday edition of the Hartford Current, frozen like a block of ice, got in there, it would have torn up this gearbox and I'd have had a huge job. Now if that happens, I'll just put a new shear pin in it and be on my way. Anyway, that's the long story of the missing videos, but I'm going to get ahead now and we're going to replace the seals in the gear case, and then we're going to reassemble everything. This should be fun. I cleaned everything up, you know, all the hardware, chased all the threads on everything. I bought 4 new Zerk fittings, so this won't happen again. And so let's get started. The first thing I want to do is replace the seal in this case on both sides. I've got I've got 2 new seals, and we're going to start by pulling the old ones out and setting these in. So let's continue. Alright, so here's the old seal. There's the new seal. And I can see where this rubber seal on the new one is kind of closing the whole opening, where the seal that's in here is just flat and flush. I'll compare the two when I get it out, if I don't destroy this thing too much getting it out, but no need to be careful on this one. Okay. Okay, there's the difference between the old seal on the right and the new seal on the left. The rubber part of it makes the opening a lot smaller on the new seal, so it should stop the oil from leaking out as bad. So that's it. It wasn't a torn seal, it was just laid down so much from years and years and years of use, I think. It just lost its effectiveness. Okay, now we'll just press in this seal. Should fit in there nicely. You can use like a socket that just fits the perfect size, or whatever you got hanging around. Go gentle. And there's that. So that was easy. And now I got another one on this unit. Just pull this out. Like so. And we'll take the other seal. And we're going to gently tap it in place. I think that looks good. So now that seal is in place. That was the reason for the whole job. But it's a good thing I took this apart, because again, like I said, that auger was locked to that shaft, and I would be replacing gearbox gears if I hadn't corrected that. Okay, next step is to attach the ring gear to the shaft, which is mounted with a pin. So we slide it on the shaft, we line up the hole for the pin. And there we go. Looks good. Okay, next step, I'm going to put the housing. I'm just going to pre-lubricate the area where that brand new seal is going to be rubbing, so it glides on nice without any issues or distortion or damage. So the seal should be riding right around there. Okay, and here's the housing. And now this is going to slide onto the shaft. I'm going to lubricate this brand new seal with some grease as well. You know what? I think I'm just going to take a file and bevel this lead edge here so that new seal will slide right over it. This thing may have been hammered on in its past life, so I'm just take it over to the vise and file this edge here so the seal will glide over it nice and smoothly without damaging it. Alright, so I just took a file and deburred this whole thing so we don't nick up that brand new seal sliding it on there. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And that ring gear is brushing up against a bushing that's inside here. There's a bushing in here just like this one. So the ring gear is pushing up against the bushing inside the case here. I'm just going to grease this shaft up on this side here where this other side new bushing is going to go. And now I'm going to slide this end cap onto this side with its new bushing. Oh, I have a gasket. I got to put a gasket in here. Okay, and then now this bushing here on this side is going to go up against the center collar of the ring gear. So the ring gear is sandwiched in between a bushing here and a bushing over here. So it shouldn't have any side-to-side play. Line up the gaskets. Get a couple screws started. Again, I cleaned up and chased these threads, so these should screw in here no problem. I don't want to damage this gasket, so let's make sure. There's a big gap between these two bolts, so you got to have this gasket in the right orientation, otherwise they won't all line up. So these all slide in nice because I chased all the threads. And now I'm going to go ahead and torque these down. I don't know what the spec is on these. I mean, you don't have to use an impact wrench or anything. Just hand torque them. Okay, I think that's good. I'm happy with that. And so now we've got our new seals in there. So we should no longer be leaking all kinds of gear oil out of this thing. Turns nicely, feels good. There's no side-to-side play. Good. I like that. I'm happy with that. Okay, the next thing I want to do now is I want to put this impeller shaft into the gear housing. I don't know if you can see in there, but there's an inner race pressed in there. It's in good shape. The bearings here are in good shape. These bearings look fine. This bearing, this race looks fine. They feel good, they look good. And so when you insert the impeller shaft in there, the worm gear will mesh with the ring gear without a problem. And then you slide this collar down and you screw this collar into the end of the housing. And so this collar will now push on this outer race of this bearing and seat this whole assembly against the inner bearing that's in the housing right now. And I don't know what the torque spec is on this. I assume it's something like an old-fashioned front wheel bearing on a two-wheel drive, you know, your old classic Buick, where you torque it down and then you back it off a little bit so you can line up the pin. Just as long as there's no play. I mean, you don't want it torqued down tight where it's binding the bearings, but you don't want any play. So I'm going to torque that thing down till all of the end play back and forth is completely gone, and it should spin freely. And you don't have to grease these because they get lubricated by the gear oil that's in this whole housing. So that's the next step. Insert and then torque down with this end cap. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to do it like this because I want to feel okay, so it's seated in there because when I turn the impeller I can see the shaft is spinning. This shaft is spinning right here when I turn it, so I know they're meshed. Okay, I just need to seat this outer bearing here a little further inside. Alright, little shot of brake cleaner, some compressed air, and now a little bit of WD-40. And let's see if that won't slide in a little better this time. I think rocking it back and forth is helping it drop in there, maybe. If I could just get this thing to start biting. See, this is what I mean by just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. Oh, I almost got a bite on some teeth. The last thing you want to do is strip any of these threads. I'm just tapping that race in gently. Every time I do that, I give it a couple of turns. I think at some point I'll just be able to turn that and it will drive it in straight, but I want to get enough teeth on it so that I don't strip anything. See, every time I do that, I get a little bit more of a turn, get more teeth. And then at some point when I'm comfortable, I'm going to just turn this thing with a tap and a hammer, chasing it around. I think it's just such a precision machine fit for that race that if it's not perfectly square, it just binds up. Because it came out, piece of cake. Alright, I think I got quite a bit of teeth in there. Little WD-40. And then let's just chase this thing around. As long as it doesn't take too much pounding to get it around. See, this is what I want to get rid of. I'm going to torque it down until I get rid of all that play. I bet there's a tool that does this that I don't have. Almost gone completely now. I'm looking around to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, I got absolutely zero end play. Alright, this feels nice and smooth now. Yep. So I'm good with this. This looks good. There's no end play. There's no binding. Zero end play. There may be one smidgen. Okay. Spins freely, no binding, zero end play. So that's probably the most critical part of reassembling this whole thing. And I think that went well. Okay, before I put these augers on, I want to replace these Zerk fittings. So these are just pressed in, which is probably why one was missing. They come out like that. Pretty easy. Make sure the hole's nothing in the hole. Gonna take the Zerk fitting. Again, it just presses in, there's no threads. So I've got a, what is this, a 1/4 inch socket that fits over the Zerk fitting and presses onto the flange. And so I'm just going to use this to kind of tap it in place. Hopefully. Can you see what I'm doing here? That sounded like it's seated nicely. It looks to be seated nicely, so there you go. Yep, that looks good. And then I'm going to replace all 4 of them like that. Alright, now I'm ready to slide the auger on. And when I took these augers apart, each side had 2 different washers. This washer, kind of cone shaped, I don't know, this really didn't fit very good. It was on this side and it didn't seem to be doing much of anything. I didn't like it. I like this one thicker. So I made one for the other side, which is thick. And I think it just helps to push the auger tubing against the washer instead of against the actual housing. Has a little added bit of protection. So I'm throwing this cone-shaped one out. I don't know if someone else put it there by mistake, but I'm going with this. And before I slide this auger on, I'm going to lubricate it with my favorite stuff, fluid film. This stuff, I've had great luck with it for resisting corrosion and not drying, staying nice and liquid. You know, WD-40 will tend to dry after time. Grease, you can put grease in there, but I'm opting for fluid film. It's just my preference. So let's fluid film up that shaft. Got my washer on. Slide it on and off a few times, make sure it's in there. So I got that much of it on for assembly, and then I will inject some more of it once it's all together. And now to keep this auger on, we drive a pin through the shaft. And that's the only thing that keeps this auger on here. Now it's on. And now we'll do the other side. Make sure you put the left auger back on the left side and the right auger back on the right side, otherwise it might be pushing the snow out away from the impeller. So it's a good idea to know. Well, I know all about this one because I fought with it, so I know where that came from, so I don't have to worry about putting it on the wrong side. Okay, so now I'm at this point. I've got both augers on, retaining pins, keeping them from sliding back and forth. So they are in. The gearbox doesn't have oil in it yet. I'm going to get to that. But I've got the washers on each side of the gearbox so that the auger tubes aren't, rubbing against the housing. Instead they're rubbing against a washer. I just think that's a good idea. I fashioned one washer because the one I took off was silly. But this assembly is one other thing. These Zerk fittings, they're just pressed in. They don't screw in, they just press in, and that's the one that was missing, and a brand new pressed in one won't stay in. The hole's enlarged for some reason. So I'm just going to put a stainless steel hose clamp to cover that hole. I can loosen that clamp, slide it over, put fluid film in there later, and then just slide the hose clamp back over the hole and tighten it. I think that'll work. And just keep an eye on these other Zerk fittings, make sure they don't fall out, because you got to have these augers spinning freely on that shaft. Under normal circumstances they don't. The whole thing's locked together. But when you hit something hard and these augers stop, the axle still needs to be able to spin, otherwise the gearbox is going to break. So those augers need to freely spin on that shaft, even though that they don't spin on the shaft during normal operations. So let's get this assembly back into the bucket. Alright, it would be nice to have a helping hand here, but let me see if I can maneuver this thing in place. And remember, I put these squeegees on here, so it's going to be kind of a tight fit in this housing. But let me see. And I'm just sliding this axle, splined axle, through that bearing right there. I'm going to prop this up so I got a straight shot going in. That. And actually what I think I might try and do is just spray some WD-40 in here to help it slide. I got these rubber impeller enhancement squeegees. They're going to be a tighter fit than just the regular impeller would have been. Oh. Yeah, I'm not home yet, but that felt pretty good. Ooh, that felt good. Yes. Almost. There we go. All right. Now put the end caps on. Okay, first thing is to secure these end caps in place. Like that. Okay, a little blue Loctite. Alright, the end cap is secured. The next thing, we got a brass bushing that goes in here. Before I put the bushing in, we are going to fluid film it. So now the shaft is riding in that bushing. Okay, and then a lock washer, large washer, and I want to put some Loctite on this one as well. I don't need this one coming out in the middle of a snowstorm. Okay, that looks good. We'll go do the other side. Okay, coming down the home stretch. Now I got both end caps on, so the axle is completely installed. These things spin freely in case there's ever a problem. I'm going to put the shear pins in and fill it with oil. Let's do the oil next. That's more fun than shear pins. Alright, I just filled the gear case with oil. Thought I had the camera on, but it was off. But nothing too critical there. It's pretty easy. Now we're going to install the shear pins. Okay, that's all set. Okay, so the work on this bucket is done. Now we've got to remate it to the tractor. So let's do that. Okay, putting the two together. It hooks on the bottom, a couple of these bolts on the top, and that's it. And the last thing is the chute adjuster. Okay, so that concludes this video of what started out to be just a quick oil change in the gearbox, turned into replacing seals in the gearbox, which turned into unfreeing a stuck auger. So I think we got everything all sorted out now. Everything seems to be in great shape. We're good to go. Yeah, there you have it. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. If so, please subscribe to the channel. And until next time, thanks for watching.